You had it yesterday. You were ready. You were gonna start. And you woke up this morning, and it's just... Lisa opens. She's been planning this thing for weeks. A project she actually cares about. She's made lists. She's watched videos. She's told people about it. And last night, lying in bed, she felt it. That certainty. She thought, tomorrow I'm doing this, but now it's tomorrow. She's sitting here. The blank document is open, and she feels nothing. No excitement, no energy, just this flat, empty feeling where the motivation used to be. And she thinks, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do it? Here's the thing about motivation. It's a personality trait. It's not something you either have or you don't. It's more like weather. It comes and goes. And most people treat it like it should be constant. Like once you decide you want something, the wanting should just stay there. That's not how it works. Your brain doesn't generate motivation because you decide something is important. It generates motivation when it expects a reward. And the reward has to feel close, has to feel real. If your brain can't picture the payoff clearly, or if the payoff feels too far away, it just doesn't send the signal. The motivation doesn't come. Think about it like this. You're standing at the bottom of a mountain. At the top, there's something you want. Your brain looks up at that peak and starts calculating. How long will this take? How hard will it be? What are the chances I actually make it? And if the answers are a long time, pretty hard, and unclear, your brain just shuts down the motivation. Not because you're weak, not because you don't really want it, but because your brain is trying to conserve energy. It doesn't want to waste resources on something that might not work out. And here's where it gets frustrating. The thing is, you do want it. The goal is real. The desire is real. But desire and motivation aren't the same thing. Desire is what you feel when you think about the end result. Motivation is what gets you to actually move. And you can have all the desire in the world and still have zero motivation. Because your brain isn't convinced the work is worth it yet. So you sit there feeling stuck. You know what you should do. You want to do it. But you just can't. And people around you might think you're procrastinating or being lazy. Or not serious, but you're not. You're just in this gap between knowing and doing, and that gap is where most people live most of the time. Motivation also disappears when the thing stops being new. At first, everything feels exciting. You're learning, you're making progress. You can see yourself getting better. And that progress is the reward. Your brain loves that. It sends you motivation because it's getting what it wants. Evidence that the effort is working. But then you hit a plateau. You're still doing the work, but you're not seeing the same results. The improvements get smaller. The gains get slower, and your brain notices. It starts questioning whether this is still worth the energy. The motivation begins to fade. Not because you've failed, but because the feedback loop isn't as strong anymore. And this is where most people quit. They think the lack of motivation means they've lost interest, that it's not for them, that they should move on to something else. But they've just hit the part where it gets harder, where the initial excitement wears off and you have to keep going anyway. And your brain doesn't like that. Your brain wants the easy wins, the quick hits, the obvious progress. There's also this thing where motivation disappears when you think about the work too much. You sit down to start. But instead of starting, you think about everything that needs to happen, all the steps, all the decisions, all the things that could go wrong. And suddenly, the task that seemed manageable, massive. Your brain looks at that mental list, says, too much. This is too much. Let's do something easier. It's like trying to swallow a whole apple. You can't do it, but you could take one bite and then another, and eventually the apple would be gone. But if you just keep staring at the whole apple, thinking about how impossible it is to swallow it whole, you'll never start. Your brain doesn't understand the concept of just start. It wants to know the full plan, the complete picture. And when it doesn't have that, it hesitates. It tells you to wait until you're ready, until you know more, until you feel more certain, and because it feels reasonable, but you're never going to feel completely ready. Readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. Motivation also disappears when you're scared, but not the obvious kind of scared. Not like fear of failure or fear of judgment. The subtle kind, the kind where you're scared it might actually work, that you might actually succeed. And then what? Then you'd have to keep going. Then people would expect things from you. Then you'd have responsibilities you don't have now. And part of your brain looks at that and thinks, maybe it just stay here. Are familiar, where no one expects anything. So the motivation vanishes, not because you can't do it, but because some part of you doesn't want the consequences of doing it. This sounds strange, but it happens all the time. Someone gets close to finishing something, and then they sabotage it. They miss deadlines, they pick fights. They suddenly get interested in 10 other things, and they don't even realize they're doing it. They just feel the motivation slipping away, and they think, I guess I wasn't meant to do this. But really, they're just protecting themselves from change. There's another reason motivation disappears, and it's probably the most common one. You're doing the thing for someone else, not for you. You're doing it because you think you should, because someone told you it was important, because it looks good, because everyone else. But deep down, you don't actually care. And your brain knows. It knows when you're just going through the motions, when you're chasing something that doesn't actually matter to you. And it stops sending motivation. Because why would it? Why would it give you energy for something you don't even want? But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes you can't tell the difference. Sometimes you think you want something because you've convinced yourself you want it. You've told yourself the story so many times that it feels real. But your brain isn't buying it. And the lack of motivation is the clue. It's your system telling you, this isn't it. This isn't yours. Because maybe you've already invested time in this thing. Maybe you've told people about it. Maybe you've built an identity around it. And admitting that you don't actually want it feels like failure. So you keep trying to force the motivation. You beat yourself up for not feeling it. You compare yourself to people who seem naturally driven, and you think something's broken in you. But nothing's broken. You're just pointed in the wrong direction. And no amount of discipline or willpower is going to create motivation for something you don't actually want. You force yourself to do it for a while. But eventually you'll burn out. Or you'll quit. Or you'll just keep feeling miserable and confused about why it's so hard. Motivation also disappears when you're already depleted. When you're running on empty. When you've been pushing for too long without rest. Your brain isn't stupid. It knows when the tank is low. And it stops sending motivation because it's trying to protect you. It's saying, we can't do more right now, we need to recover. But most people don't listen to that. They think they should be able to keep going. They look at other people who seem to be doing fine and wonder why they can't handle it. So they push harder. They drink more coffee. They try to force themselves through it. And the motivation doesn't come back. Because you can't bully your brain into giving you energy it doesn't have. And then there's the kind of motivation that disappears because you're overwhelmed by options. You have too many things you want to do. Too many ideas. Too many projects. And your brain can't pick one. Picks none. It freezes. Because to one thing means letting go of the others. And letting go feels like loss. So you stay stuck in possibility. Never quite starting anything. Always thinking about what you could do. But never actually doing it. And people might call that indecisive. Or scattered. But really, it's just your brain trying to keep all the doors open. Because closing doors feels permanent. And permanent feels scary. Here's what most people get wrong about motivation. They think it comes before action. They think you need to feel motivated in order to start. But it usually works the other way. Action creates motivation. You start, even when you don't feel like it. You do one small thing, and that small thing creates a little bit of momentum, and momentum feels good, and feeling good creates more motivation, and more motivation makes the next step easier. But you have to start without it. You have to be willing to move when it's not there. And that's uncomfortable, because it feels like you're doing it wrong, like you're supposed to wait until you feel ready, until the motivation arrives. But if you wait for that, you might wait forever. Motivation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build through tiny actions, through showing up even when it's hard, through proving to your brain that this thing is worth the energy. And slowly the motivation starts to come, not because you're suddenly a different person, but because your brain is starting to believe that the effort might actually pay off. You don't need constant motivation. You just need to be willing to move without it. To take one step when everything in you wants to stay still. Because that's where change actually happens. Not in the big, inspired moments, but in the small, unglamorous ones. When you do the thing anyway, even though you don't feel like it, even though it's hard, even though no one's watching, that's when you realize motivation isn't the thing you need. It's just the thing you're waiting for, and you can stop waiting